You know this is called a mutiny, right?
I'm telling you, this is going to be great for the show. It's time a woman took control. Your usual fee?
I don't know, Christina.
Come on, think of the times he fumbled. The mistakes our listeners corrected.
The time he had Robert send an ovation to the show and only he was mentioned. And the time he shot you.
Not to mention the horrible dad jokes in the intro.
Yeah, they can be pretty bad.
Hey guys, listen to this. If you don't pay your exorcist, do you get repossessed? What?
Well, that was easy.
Well, this is the guy who couldn't handle his pot brownies.
Woo! Calling dibs on running the show today.
Hello, I'm Dr. Hector Garcia, and I took a left at the Valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
And now that we have someone running this gig that can actually enunciate, let's get into introductions of Left at the Valley crew. So, there was a man who had an idea. That idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people, see if they could become something more. If they could work together when the world needed them to fight the battles they couldn't. That is Left at the Valley family. Me, I live my life as terrified as the Hulk is of Thanos. Sadly, I can't just hide in my mind and let someone else control my body. Not that I haven't tried. And the woman who has been here the longest, Nancy. She who turned down S.H.I.E.L.D. when they offered her a job. She doesn't work for Nazis. Kirsten, my love. The woman with words to calm my PTSD-riddled mind, like Black Widow calms the Hulk. She saves my life every day. Last, but not least, a man who looks better in a leather jacket than Fury, but has yet to pull off the eye patch. And so in the later half of this show, we are going to be talking to Darrel Ray about renegotiating relationships. And I am so excited to talk to him about that because there's never enough talk about relationships. But first, let's get into chit chat, which I control this time. Ha ha ha. So, because I'm a nerd and I'm obsessed with Marvel, we're going to start this off by talking about Endgame, which I just saw last night. So amazing, and it is insane.
But before, I'm just going to stop you right here.
No spoilers.
You're not giving spoilers?
None.
Okay.
None. There will be no spoilers because...
Members of the audience, you're safe.
Do you have any idea what they're talking about, Nancy?
I have no idea.
That's okay. This isn't for you. This is for nerds like us. I actually successfully saw this movie without any spoilers, and it was amazing.
Yes, it was.
Like, if you can successfully see it without spoilers, it's a magical experience. So I actually what I wanted to talk about is the money this movie has made. It is insane.
Yeah.
It's just coming up to its second weekend, and it's almost made $2 billion already.
It shows that as a species, we are always craving storytelling.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We really, it's really probably the most defining trait of our species.
It's just like speaking for all the non-nerds out there. I know there must be at least one other person, and we're bonding at this moment. Is this like a post-apocalyptic movie, or
no? This is, well, yes and no. I mean, it's based on
Marvel comics.
what I call the spaghetti westerns of modern day times, which is the superhero culture.
Oh, good. No, I'm happy to hear about it. So I'll learn something, which should be great.
Absolutely. And not only is it just that we crave storytelling, we crave that ending.
Did you guys notice this is going to be a big year for geeks?
Yes.
Because,
what year isn't big for geeks?
No, but think about it this way, okay? This year, they are closing off the Marvel universe, right, with this movie and game. The Game of Thrones season is the last one.
Yes.
And it's going to be also the last Star Wars as well.
Yeah,
all in the
let
same
me clarify,
year.
they're not ending the Marvel universe.
No,
it's
but
just
the end of this
specific
phase.
The arc, this arc story is closing
Yes.
off. So it's a big year for geeks this year.
Very.
Now, does that mean that some of these movies are going to go on to be not video game?
Oh, most likely.
They're going to go on to do that, and
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, there are already video games of the Marvel Universe
There's
that
a
I
lot of
own
them.
and have played, and they're amazing.
And you have to point out that this is the first time in the history of movie cinemas. This is 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
It spans 20 movies that tells one continuous
Actually,
story.
22.
22? Okay.
22.
It tells one kind of continuous stories. It brings it all together and it closes it off rather nicely too.
And so when did you start watching, from the beginning?
Oh yeah, actually, from the very beginning myself.
And so everybody's from the beginning?
Yep.
I'm the only one that's sitting there going,
they have obviously based the character of Black Widow after you.
Well,
obviously.
exactly.
Okay.
You know, she's just a younger version of you, but you know.
Well, that's why they tried to recruit you. They were like,
that's right.
somebody
you need
needed
the original.
Somebody needed to teach Scarlett Johansson a few.
Exactly.
So I was the inspiration. That makes me feel like
Yeah.
Okay.
Except you die. That's the problem. She dies. Oh, sorry.
So much for no
Fucking
spoilers.
Spoilers, Kevin.
Sorry.
You have to edit that out. And then you have to leave in this of us being like, spoilers, motherfucker.
To our audience members,
just
we
beep
apologize.
It. Just beep it.
Okay, I'll beep it.
Just beep it.
I'll beep it.
Because, god damn. Sorry, I swear a lot, guys. When I'm in control.
So the overall consensus was you liked it.
Yes.
I did. I don't know how,
It was good storytelling.
like in the future, how this movie will be looked back on, because there's so many biased emotions going into it, because everyone's seeing it. Well, hopefully everyone seeing it has seen Infinity War. So we're all going into it being like, we need this release of our collective trauma.
It was also very emotional.
Very emotional.
Yeah.
I in the movie theater when I watched it, I could see a lot of people actually brought to tears.
Oh,
watching
I
it.
cried.
Yeah?
Multiple times.
There's a lot of emotional moments. It's like,
Well,
wow.
for 20 years, if you're attached,
You get attached to the characters.
you get attached to the characters and the story arc. It becomes part of your life. You fantasize multiple endings and what would you do in their place. And
Well,
you're invested.
That's where fan fiction comes in.
And then
Well,
it's
it's an investment like any other series, either on television or in the movies.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what the creators and producers want.
Yeah.
You know, that type of
And
connection.
I definitely think that so many things are going wrong in our own world that we use that as a form of escape.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. And speaking of all the things going wrong in our world, my next story, Republican Steve King.
Oh,
Genius
jeez.
man. At a town hall meeting he said that he chooses to look at the other good side of climate change instead of focusing on global warming.
The other good side of climate change.
And he said
Yeah.
that surely there is something on the other side that could be good. 70% of the earth is covered by water. If the earth warms, then there is evaporation that goes into the atmosphere. According to Newton's first law of physics, what goes up must come down. That means it will rain more and more places. It might rain harder in some places. It might snow in some of those places. But it's surely gotta shrink the deserts and expand the green growth.
Oh my
There's
God,
surely
these-
got to be some good in that.
These
So
people are
I
ignorant.
just look at the other good side.
that's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
how
they're-
that works.
I know.
Well, it's
At
like-
all.
I know.
And it's the Republican. In Charlottesville, there were good people on both
Yeah,
sides.
exactly.
This is just following the big spin.
But it's like these people imagine that because there's climate change and global warming, they think that all of a sudden everybody's going to turn into Hawaii.
Yeah. Well,
Everywhere's going to become Hawaii all of a sudden. There's not going to be no consequences except it's going to get a bit warmer.
but the
Fuck
issue
off.
is the very basis of his comments are false, because when the climate warms and the biomes change, deserts expand. They don't shrink, because where it's raining more, it used to get cold. It's not raining in the deserts. The deserts are getting hotter.
Yes.
And the places that were cold, the tundras, they're disappearing.
Well, science, bitch.
Yeah,
need to learn it.
I know. And it's insane and frustrating, because there are so many things that this impacts that so many people just take for granted.
Yeah.
And this actually rolls into my next story I wanted to talk about, is maple syrup, a staple of Canadian life.
You don't have maple syrup in your blood, in your veins. Are you really Canadian?
Because, like I mentioned, those warming tundras are making it so the maple syrup production is getting decimated.
Yes.
Because to get the sap that turns into maple syrup,
and it bothers me,
you need very specific temperature. It's hot, above freezing, not hot, but above, for Canadians, that's hot, above freezing. You need above freezing temperatures during the day, but at night you need it to go below freezing. And that's not happening very much
the tree
anymore.
releases the water.
So what's the good side of that? That the artificial maple syrup made by Aunt Jemima?
No.
Those corporate people now rise to the top. Oh, goody! We now get to eat chemicals.
Yeah.
See, there is a good side.
And in 2012, the production in Ontario dropped by 54%.
Well, I'm curious about the production in Quebec, because most of it is actually in Quebec. But so I'm really curious about that side. But you might not have it.
Worldwide, or not worldwide, Canada-wide, it was 12.5% that
That's
year.
huge. That's a huge drop.
Yeah.
As a personal thing here, Aunt Jemima,
I grew up on Aunt Jemima.
When our parents tried to push that on us, we used to call it, in French, we'd say sirop de poteau. Sirop is for syrup, obviously. And poteau is essentially a pole. So it's translated, it's like a pole syrup.
Oh my
because
gosh.
we say it was a syrup that was drained from like telephone poles and shit like that, right? So it wasn't from maple trees, and we hated this stuff.
I sadly grew up on Aunt Jemima.
Let's see what happened.
No,
but the first time I had real maple syrup, literally, it was like a coming of age moment for Canadian.
If you're one of our American listeners, forget Aunt Jemima, forget whatever you got. Just spend the extra money, get some real maple syrup.
Amazing.
Put that on your pancakes. You will thank us.
Absolutely.
Did you know also, funny thing is, in Japan, Canadian maple syrup is a luxury item, and
seriously?
Oh yes, and they pay through the nose for it, and they love it. They absolutely love it.
It's amazing.
It is. Even here, it's an expensive product. You can get a good,
but worth it.
Oh yeah.
But the sad thing is, it's going to just be more expensive as it starts. I was reading, and there was one year where they had like 3 weeks of production.
Yeah. Because
it's just the temperature is changing.
I have very fond memories as a child of going out with the horse-drawn carriage on a cabana circus, we used to call it, and then he'd give us one of those little cans, and there's the big boiler where the syrup is, and you just dip it in and then seal the can, and you leave, you go home with your can of maple syrup. It's fantastic stuff.
Yes, Canada is a mythical fairy tale.
Put the syrup on the snow, roll it up with a stick, eat it.
The only rival, I guess, is Vermont syrup, which is close. I guess it just kind of depends on your taste buds and which side of the border you live on.
Exactly. Yeah. But besides, if you go past Vermont, you don't really have any maple production in the States whatsoever.
No.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we love our maple so much we got it on a freaking flag.
Well, yeah, it's such a staple of Canada.
Exactly.
Yeah. And sadly, but this news doesn't get better, because another horrible effect of climate change is the National Snow and Ice Data Center this month released their sea ice update. In the Arctic Ocean, 1.2% of the ice is older than 4 years.
Ooh.
35 years ago, it was 1/3.
Ouch.
Yeah. And so the issue with this is that the ice that is newer, it breaks up easier.
Yes.
In storms, it melts faster, and so it disappears faster. So they're actually predicting that by the mid-2030s, there's going to be no summer ice in the Arctic. Yeah, but climate change isn't real.
No, that's just
no. Well, you get back to so many of the discussions that we've had, and other shows like us have had as well. Is that the facts don't matter when you have a climate denier? It doesn't really, and that's really the sad and horrible part of it. Is that when people totally ignore the facts and go with faith or go with whatever.
Cognitive bias.
Whatever kinds of things that people want to believe. At that point, society just takes a little nosedive because you've got a lot of people who are standing in the way of real progress dealing with these kinds of problems.
Seems these deniers are not going to face facts until their air conditioning fails.
Yeah. Well,
it really seems it's not affecting me right now. I don't give a fuck.
The interesting thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the people who deny climate change are older.
Well,
they're not the people.
That's because they don't want to change their lifestyle.
Well, and they're not the people that are actually going to live with the ramifications.
That's true.
Like, I am going to be alive, hopefully, in 2030, and there are some old people who won't due to old age, and I'm going to be alive, hopefully, in 2050 and 2060, and I don't really want to have to fight in the water wars. Because, I would love to live in a prosperous world.
Well, a lot of it boils down to exactly that. It's like, it's really being selfish. Somebody who's a climate change denier is also the kind of guy who doesn't want to give up his big pickup.
Yeah, totally.
He doesn't want to face the possibility he might have to change his life.
Yeah. And the realization that everything he's been doing up till now has been detrimental to the world.
Yeah.
And he's the problem.
A lot of it stands to that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that is all I have today to depress you all. So,
Not sure I like her taking over the show. It's kind of depressing from the start here.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll cheer you all up.
All right.
Next, we're going to go to Nancy for Top 10.
Good, I'll brighten everybody.
Yes, that's what we have.
I really will. So this is so frivolous. It's not really top 10, but what the heck, we can call it top 10 because it's mine and I get a chance to do that, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I was hungry. And I didn't know what the heck I wanted to eat. I wanted something. So I also had to do the top 10. And so I started looking through different food lists and things like that. And by accident, I actually ran into a couple of lists that had what was the favorite dessert the year you were born. Ooh. So I thought, well, I go back to probably when people sat around the campfire and had dandelion crickets, for their desserts because, that's all that was available. But I thought, no, that would be kind of fun because I wondered if you're born in a certain year and there's a dessert that was famous, does that dessert determine your likes and dislikes of sweet stuff the rest of your life? I mean, I had to, think of something. So anyway, we'll start with Kevin. Since you all, we'll start with Kevin, and tell me the range. Tell me within 3 or 4 years, and then we'll get to specifics.
Well, you want the year of my birth?
Yeah, the year of your birth, and just kind of.
I've got no problem mentioning that. Like I said many times before, I was born on the 7th day of the 4th month, 74 at 7:47, and that's actually true.
Okay, so you're within the range of 1973 to 1977, your dessert is carrot cake.
Ew.
So how do you feel about carrot cake?
Actually, as a kid, I did not like carrot cake.
Because it's gross.
That's not surprising.
But today, I am completely the other way around. I love carrot cake.
Really?
It's fantastic. Especially when you got a nice icing on top there. Oh, yeah.
Is it the icing that you like, or the carrots, or the spices? What about that?
Or the mix.
As far as carrot cake is concerned, I'm usually more of a sponge guy. I prefer the sponge on cake, but carrot cake, I think it's the mix.
Well, would you consider it one of the top 3 favorites, or just it's okay?
No, it's great. Is it one of the top 3 of my favorites? No.
Oh, okay.
But it's absolutely I've got no problem having carrot cake at all. It's great stuff.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about carrot cake during that time was that the reason it was popular then was because it was sort of health conscious with the carrots. And then so people could say, "Oh, okay, it's a little
1970s
lighter.
health-conscious.
It's a lighter cake. It's not chocolate, and it was, so there's veggies in it. It had to be so that part of the health consciousness.
It's practically a salad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like saying, "Hey, I'm drinking wine. It's way better than drinking pop."
Well, the interesting thing about that, Christina, is if you actually go to the year 1974, one of the most popular recipes at that point was Watergate salad, which was a salad that's more of a fruit,
Watergate salad?
fluffy.
They
Watergate
called it
salad. It originated at the Watergate Hotel.
Oh, okay.
It didn't have anything to do with Nixon, but it had to do with the Watergate.
When you ordered a salad, did you have to go, "I am not a crook"?
That's right. That's right. Which is funny. So, we went from the carrot cake to the salad. So, in a way,
There we go.
it's stretching it, but I'll do anything to make a connection, right? Okay. So, Christina and Kirsten, you had the same
1995.
birthday.
We do.
Which
We're only
was
2 weeks apart. 95.
95. Okay.
Can anyone guess which
It's almost
one's
like
older?
it's almost like your lives are intertwined.
Yeah.
You-
It's kind of
I-
cute, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you live
Okay, so
close
this
to each
is
other.
okay.
Out in
So
the
you
boonies.
both within the range of 1993 to 1997. You guys fall into the molten chocolate lava cake
Oh, I hate that
category.
stuff.
Oh, I can see by your faces.
I don't do chocolate.
That's not my favorite kind of cake.
You don't do chocolate? What's wrong with
I
you?
don't
There is a
enjoy
reason.
chocolate.
Okay, you have to share the reason.
Okay, so growing up,
I'm going to start building a catapult.
my dad worked at a chocolate factory,
At a chocolate factory, and it's molten chocolate.
but he would bring home all the slightly misshapen chocolate. So he would bring home boxes and boxes of chocolate. So I had a lot of chocolate growing
So
up.
you chocolate it out. Is
yeah,
what you're saying. Okay.
basically.
So I think that's really fun because right away you got the connection. It's not a positive one, but there's a reason why that was there. So
I'm a huge fan of chocolate, but molten chocolate cake does not appeal to me either.
It's just too
much.
It's
Too much.
Too much.
Just too much.
Often I'll ask, my big flaw, I do have a huge sweet tooth. But even when you go to a place today and you order dessert, it's like you have, I don't know, a piece of chocolate cake, and then you'll say, "Oh, can you put a bit of whipped cream?" Great. And then they'll put a chocolate drizzle on top, and then some powdered sugar. It's like, that's too much. That's too much. It's
Just like whipped cream.
yes.
Sometimes less is more.
The cake is enough as it is. Whipped cream, sure, but I mean, drizzle and then powdered sugar and what else?
No,
I
it's-
like Black Forest
Would you put some
cake.
crack on top while you're at it?
Black Forest cake is amazing.
No, you become diabetic just by looking at it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wild.
And you're talking to a guy who's got a huge sweet tooth on top of that, so.
Yeah,
Actually,
no,
I gotta say, coffee cake is one of my favorites.
Well, now you can make those molten things that you can make in a mug, so you can do it like in 2 minutes, and it's still too sweet. It hasn't improved in the changes.
Can you give us a couple of ranges, because you only got two of us? So can you give us a couple of ranges?
Well,
in
we
popular
go back to
desserts?
1990. Well, go back to specifically 1995 because that was the range. So the specific 1995, believe it or not, was an eclair cake, which still has.
I love eclairs.
So an eclair cake has more of a custardy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Proper eclair has custard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you guys
Tim
feel
Hortons doesn't.
Yeah, if you get like a Long John with like some kind of icing, cream, white granulate stuff in it, no, that's horrible. Toss that out.
So that's kind of a spongy. You were talking about
No,
kind of
a
spongy.
proper eclair is supposed to be kind of flaky.
Flaky.
A proper French eclair is supposed to be
I've
nice
never
and-
had one then.
Then
A
you don't
proper
know what
French
you need.
eclair.
Well,
Yeah.
Kevin, you'll just have to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want my cooking, but if
I was meaning you could
course.
buy them.
well, not around here. I can't seem to find a good one.
You
right
can fly to Quebec,
here. Yeah, that's right.
buy them, and fly back.
Of course, and I will send you my
And
bill.
take all of us with you.
If I could, I totally would. I would bring you guys back there, and you would have a gastronomic feast of which you would never have the same again.
So there's the connection there. That's something that you haven't had that you can look forward to.
Yeah.
So altogether, I'd say we hit 100%.
There we go.
There we go. Not a top 10, but it's a sweet spot of the show.
Perfect.
I like it. So now that she has wrapped up her wonderful segment, next we move to Kirsten to do another Oh, you say it first.
This is great radio, by the way.
I know. No, but you say it, and then I finish it off.
Another brilliant moment.
Brought to you by religion!
Okay, well, here's something you probably didn't know. A Kuwaiti scientist claims that homosexuality can be cured with suppository that kills semen-eating anal worms.
Oh, that just sounds wonderful. Just wonderful.
This must be some Islamic science, right?
It's something.
Goddamn.
Anal eating semen.
Semen-eating anal worms.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Every time I look at this, all I can see is anal worms. It pops out of the page, and I just die. So,
I don't know whether I'd like to understand the mind that came up with that.
This is why aliens don't contact us. They read this and they say, fuck that shit.
yeah.
I wonder, would that be a regular part of this person's conversation in a social setting or not?
I feel conflicted about this because it's a woman scientist, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so it's like you want to encourage women scientists, especially in Islam, and then this guy.
And then this happens. So, the Jerusalem Post reports that a Kuwaiti scientist is being promoted on Kuwaiti TV as having discovered a cure for homosexuality based on Islamic medicine.
Kill me now.
Appearing on Scope TV, Dr. Mariam Al-Sohal explains her novel theory. I discovered therapeutic suppositories that curb the sexual urges of boys of the third gender as well as the fourth gender.
What?
Which is butch lesbians. They have excessive sexual urges.
Yeah, well, in the Islamic world, it seems that homosexual men are called the third gender, and homosexual women are called the fourth.
But
gender.
only butch homosexual women.
Oh, I guess so.
Them.
I guess they
is
can't.
Apparently, still
yeah,
women.
they can't. They can't see like
Wow.
And
feminist.
by the way, this is science, and there's nothing to be ashamed of.
You want to know what else is science? Gay people.
The sexual urge develops when a person is sexually attacked, and afterward it persists because there is an anal worm that feeds on semen.
Does this woman realize that not all gay men have anal sex?
Clearly, no.
Like that is a fact. Not all gay men have anal sex.
As a matter of fact, I remember seeing a stat that's the vast majority of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like how?
So now you have a choice. You can go through conversion therapy, which is not scientific, or the anal eat. Wait, they're eating.
It's a suppository that kills the semen-eating anal worm.
I would take the suppository.
I mean, it's wonderful to have a choice now.
Yeah, well,
to cure you.
Religious cures, right? And what ails you? Yeah, okay. So, so what happens when she says like the fourth gender of quote unquote butch looking females? How are they having semen eating anal worms all of a sudden?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But this continuing. So what I did was to produce suppositories which are to be used by certain people at a certain time, and it cures those urges by exterminating the worms that feed on sperm. The ingredients are the same for both sexes, but I made them in different colors. We start the patient on a balanced diet when the treatment begins. It is a balanced diet of bitter, sour, salty, and sweet foods in order to cleanse the body of poisons.
Bitter, salty, and sweet foods. So all foods.
Bitter, sour, salty, and sweet foods.
So all kinds of foods.
Yes.
Not spicy though.
The diet for the third gender, the male ones, consists of foods that increase their masculinity and build muscle. Any food that is buried underground provides men with stability, strengthens their muscles, and increases their masculinity. Bitter foods increase masculinity.
What?
So have fun with your potatoes.
So I gather this is not like a do-it-yourself in the privacy of your own home. You actually have to go to this doctor's office and choose I'm a yellow color, I'm a green color, and then
she's
you
probably
go
pink and
through
blue.
the therapy.
It's guaranteed to be pink and blue.
God
It's just weird. Oh, God.
Oh.
Okay, so...
Some people don't have other people in their life that just say, stop.
yes.
Don't do it.
Oh, yes.
Hold on. There's got to be, at some point... There's got to be in that story at some point where she's going to say, this ties in exactly what the Quran says, right?
Not from what I saw.
No? Oh,
But
I'm
I
shocked.
imagine it's in there somewhere.
It's got to be in there
I looked
somewhere.
at this and I was like, there's no way religion is not involved in this. There's no way it's not involved.
Oh, God.
Well, I find usually anyone who thinks that homosexuality is bad
Yeah.
is thinking that because of religion.
Usually, yeah.
Don't leave your anal worms on my couch here.
I'm not of the third gender. I'm not even of the fourth gender, apparently.
Fifth or sixth or seventh gender. Oh,
So-
God.
Moving on. What does 5G technology, 5G technology, artificial intelligence, and more have to do with the Antichrist and the end times?
Everything.
The Antichrist is a millennial?
The Antichrist uses Huawei.
Plenty, says pastor and author Mark Biltz.
Oh, boy.
Of course.
Yes.
As technology becomes more and more a part of our everyday lives, Biltz says we must consider theories about the Antichrist and emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, Siri, Alexa, Watson, 5G, and more, which are creeping into our lives on a daily basis and changing our perspective on how things could possibly play out, even in the next few years.
Is this guy saying that Alexa is the Antichrist?
I think so.
I think it would be Siri.
Yeah, she's kind of a bitch.
I'd like to say that, to Google Play, say, Satan, play this.
Excuse me, his name is Lucifer.
And
Loose.
Lucy!
Play Highway to Hell with AC/DC.
Yes.
And as the technology race continues, it is no longer difficult to imagine the Antichrist as some kind of hybrid human cyborg able to project himself all over the world at one time as a hologram that demands to be worshipped, he added.
The Terminator.
With all the advances in technology, the ability to produce avatars, holograms, and computer software installed into our bodies, so our thoughts and emotions, as well as our purchases and our movements, can be monitored, there is no doubt that we are the culmination of one age and entering the threshold of another. Wow. So, the Antichrist is a cyborg.
All right.
The mental
That solves that.
stretches that these people... Could you imagine living, getting a glimpse of the reality these people live in? Wow.
Yeah, I was religious when I was younger, I guess. I was a bit of a believer, but even to the stretches of the imagination these people go through is like, holy crap. Even for, I can recall for younger me thinking that would be just crazy. It's like, nobody goes that far. But then again, I do recall reading some magazine articles about saying stuff about the end of the world and the mark of the beast.
Oh, it was going to be the square thing. The square thing was going to be the mark of the beast.
They used to say that the mark of the beast you would only, if you had the mark of the beast, then only with that would you be able to trade.
Yeah, and
so
buy
when they
things.
started talking about bringing debit cards at the time.
Oh, really? It was debit cards for you?
Well, but at the time that I read the article, as soon as they started bringing technology into banking, then they started panicking that was going to be the mark of the beast. And then they started talking about doing some experiments with implanting people with microchips.
So they just have to scan.
You could just scan your
that would
hand
be
or something
so
like that
easy.
to access your money. Then, oh my God, that was the mark of the beast. And then, of course, every time they just bring it back up because the story is so vague
Totally.
that anything can be portrayed as that.
And there's always a certain percentage of the population that's going to support it.
Yeah, and the Antichrist is exactly that kind of trope, right? It is such a vague character. It could be absolutely anything. It could be a president gone rogue, or a dictator, or a cyborg, or whatever, right?
I think a
But that's
president gone
easier.
rogue is a dictator.
I mean, the broader you make that concept, the more people are going to believe it.
Yes.
The more narrow it is, people are going to say, no, not quite, but boy, just expand it. It could be this, that, or the other.
This is why a lot of times we talk about end of the world, and they talk about the apocalypse is coming. It's been coming for 2,000 years now, apparently. But as soon as they get specific, they fail miserably.
Yep,
Exactly.
totally.
You know, so they kind of keep it as vague as possible. And this is where the charlatan also resides, because they know that people believe it's happening at some point, but then he tries to put a bit of specificity in it and make a buck off it at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Well, we shall head into our second half to talk to Darrel Ray. And we are excited.
We'll be right back.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
Hi, I'm the Supreme Irreverend Dr. Randy Tyson from the Legion of Reason Diversion. Join me and my co-hosts, Christine Shelska, Twyla, and Nate Phelps, as we explore issues at the intersection of atheism, humanism, and skepticism. Topics range from alternative medicine to the interference of religion in public policy. We often have special guests to help us understand the topic du jour. Previous guests include biologist Jerry Coyne, ex-Muslim author Ali Rizvi, philosopher Peter Boghossian, and the late physicist Victor Stanger. You can watch us on the Legion of Reason YouTube channel or subscribe to the audio version through your favorite podcatchers such as iTunes or Stitcher. And don't forget to like the Legion of Reason Facebook page.
Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature. That's what that is. And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days, and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during Revelation. To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer.
Okay, and today we have our amazing guest, Darrel Ray. We've actually had him on the most out of every guest, and there is a reason for that. We love him because he is so amazingly intelligent in so many different areas, and specifically, we brought him on today to talk about renegotiating relationships. And then we also want to discuss some of the other things you do. So to start off, for listeners who haven't been listening for a long time and listened to your previous episodes, would you be able to just give us an intro into who Dr. Darrel Ray is?
Well, thank you, Christina. Always glad to be back on with you guys. I'm going to start off by saying my most recent accomplishment is that I think I'm a front runner, if not a finalist in the naked gardening contest for 2019. And if I win, I will get back on the show. But anyway, I'm a psychologist. I've been psychologist for close to 40 years of my adult life. I'm 39 and holding, obviously. And I work primarily with organizations right now, a couple organizations that are near and dear to my heart that I started, and that's Recovering from Religion. I'm the president of the board of that, and we are celebrating, I bet you guys didn't know this, Recovering from Religion is celebrating its 10th anniversary.
Really?
Oh, that's fantastic.
April was our 10th anniversary. As a part of that 10th anniversary, we're doing something we're calling an excursion, which is kind of like a retreat in the beautiful hills of North Carolina, where we will be having quite a few people come from all over the country to talk about recovery issues and dealing with their own journey for 2.5 days. Anyway, I run the I'm the board chair of the Recovering from Religion, and I started Secular Therapy Project, which we'll talk about later. And I'm the author of several books. The most relevant to your audience is God Virus, How Religion Affects Our Lives and Culture, and the second book, The Sex and God, which ties into my naked gardening fetish. Sex and God, How Religion Distorts Our Sexuality. And I use that a lot in the book to show just how fucked up religion is with respect to sexuality.
Yeah.
And are you going to bleep that out, Kevin?
Oh, God, no. Oh, I'm not bleeping anything.
Okay.
Well, the only thing you're bleeping out is the spoiler you dropped earlier for Endgame. Oh, he made me mad.
Okay, does that answer your question, Christina?
It does. And thank you so much for sharing that. And hopefully if any of our listeners want to listen to more, they can go read these books. So do we want to start by going into what is renegotiating relationships?
Sure. Okay. Well, I think first of all, we have to start off by recognizing that our culture pushes a lot of. Now, if you start doing that kind of shit with me, Kevin, I'll lose the narrative. You'll lose me totally, and I'll laugh so hard you'll have to edit the whole thing out. It'll make your job a lot harder. Kevin's, I don't know what that was.
It was a Donald Trump toilet brush.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's not what I thought I saw at first. Okay. I won't even tell you what I thought I saw.
Sorry, let's get this back on track.
What are you talking about? This is perfectly on track for us.
It really is, though.
Yeah, okay.
Nancy's
so let's
so
begin
done.
with go on any country music station, go on any pop music station, and just listen to about 3 songs. And 2 out of the 3, or 3 out of the 3, will have amazingly crazy assumptions about how relationships operate. And the big assumption is you are mine forever. That's the one you hear over and over again. And that when you decided that you weren't mine forever, it totally broke my heart and it's all your fault. So, I mean, that's the second part. Now, the first part you get in pop music, the second part you get in country music. You know what you get when you play a country music song backwards?
Everything back?
You get your dog back, you get your house back,
Oh my gosh.
get back. And that's only partially true. But it really is, country music does focus on a different component of the love relationship. Now, I'm just talking statistically speaking. You know, on both pop side and country side, you get both the full spectrum. But you do see this, you're mine forever and I'm in love with you and I can't live without you bullshit on both sides. Now, when you start with the assumption of a relationship, in order to be successful, has to last a lifetime, you've basically set up 90 to 95% of all the people for failure. That's just the way it's going to work. Now, does that make sense?
Definitely.
All right. And I had 4 grandparents, 2 on each side. They were both married for over 50 years. And they were proud that they'd been married for 50 years. And they were 4 of the most miserable people I've ever known in my life.
That sucks.
And to mention the word sex would embarrass them or anger them. So there's something going on there. And that's why I wanted to talk about this renegotiating relationships. Because it's pretty clear that my grandparents could not renegotiate the relationship. It's like you signed a contract when you're 19, 20, however old you were when you got married. And that contract is locked in so tightly that it can never be renegotiated. And the interesting thing about the contract is many of the clauses are unwritten. I mean, nobody sits down and writes. No, I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people sit down and write a marriage contract that here's the rules. Although I have met some people in the humanist world that do that, and I love it. I think that's great. And there's other areas like in the BDSM world, you see relationship contracts, which is great. But most people on this planet never even heard of the notion of renegotiating their relationship. And And so we don't even have the skill. We don't even have the language, let alone the skills for it. If I went to some of my old long-term married friends and said, have you guys renegotiated your relationship in the last 5 years? They'd look at me like I was from outer space. It doesn't compute with them. And I do know some people that would love to renegotiate their relationship, but their partner would have a cow if they did. I mean, it's just like, and yet they're both miserable. They're both. Now I'm even assuming here monogamy. I'm not even assuming anything but monogamy. So, is that, Christina? Is that the way you're wanting to go?
Yeah, I would say that, because there are so many people who don't even realize it's an option. Like, because for an example in my own life, when Kirsten and I started dating and then got engaged, we actually sat down and talked about, if this doesn't work out, we don't have to stick together, because we're human and we're gonna evolve and change, and some of those changes might bring us in different paths.
Right.
And if that happens, we'll deal with it, and we're not gonna we'll enter this relationship knowing that is a possibility. Right. So we'll treasure every moment we have together. And it was interesting because my twin sister, when I told her about that, it was she couldn't even understand it. Like, she was like, to be fair, my sister thinks marriage is only for having kids, so she's not exactly the best gauge for relationships. But it was interesting that it was like the concept of that one day you might not be with that person if you get married to them. It was like a foreign concept to her, even though marriage is statistically likely to end with divorce.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, yeah, it might, but at least that divorce would be amicable and you'd still be friends afterwards if you sat down like thinking, okay, we will change in the future.
Right. Well, it leads to it, if you have these assumptions going into a relationship, whether it might not even be a marriage, it could be almost any kind of romantic relationship. If you go in with the assumption that when it ends, that means it's a failure, that's really a bad assumption. It's crazy, actually. It means that you're going to feel, no matter how well you do in a relationship, you're going to feel like you failed. And what a stupid idea. I have probably, how many jobs do we have in our life? And every time you leave a job or get laid off from a job or anything that terminates your job, do you feel like a failure? No, most of the time we don't. We realize, well, that job ended, or I don't like that job, or that was a terrible boss, or whatever. I'm going on to the next job. You don't go out there and say, well, I'm a terrible life failure because I didn't. And yet people go into our relationships like that.
Dr. Ray, is it possible that people have a hard time negotiating a relationship because we don't really see it as something romantic? I mean, negotiating is not really something that we see as, spur of the moment, passionate romance or anything like that. It sounds more like clinical, lawyers involved and stuff like that. Is it maybe that's why people have a kind of like a reticence to actually explore that option?
I think there's something to that. Again, back to the pop music piece. Music, our culture is very, very focused on the first 4 to 5 years of a relationship. It doesn't even have you ever heard a song? How many songs have you heard that say, yeah, we've been together for 25 years and we still love each other? You will hear one of those every now and then on country music, because country music does acknowledge that piece. Yes. But pop music never seems to acknowledge.
Yeah, but that usually deals with a pickup truck.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just hit on those two, because you can go to operas. Opera's even worse. And I'm an opera lover. I love it. But opera's even worse. You never get a sense about what a relationship should look like after 4 or 5 years. So when people sign the contract, and by that I mean they go through the wedding ceremony and they make these public vows, that's as much as signing anything, they're not thinking 5 years, 10 years down the line, because they're in what we now know of as new relationship energy. Mm-hmm. And it's that flood of endorphins that people get that they're drug addicts. When people take their vows at a wedding ceremony after having been engaged for a year or 6 months or whatever it is. They are still high on each other's drugs. You create a drug in me, I create a drug in you, and we are high on those drugs. After about somewhere between 3 and 5 years, the drug stops being produced. We stop stimulating that in one another. Well, that is the way our biology is put together. So at the end of that time, we're not going to feel, oh, I'm so in love with you forever and ever and ever, and you can do no wrong and all that. No, you left the toothpaste lid off the toothpaste again, and it finally pissed me off. Or, your socks are still in the middle of the living room, or you're texting your friend during our conversation. There's any number of things that start coming together, and if you can't identify with at least one of those, I'm sure I could come up with 72 others. And we have to then sit down and say, wait a minute, we're at the end of the first phase of our relationship. And if we start, as human beings, start acknowledging our biology and say most relationships are kick-ass wonderful for 3 to 5 years. Most don't even last as long, of course. But if they do, 3 to 5 years is their limit. Then now let's talk about what do we do next. And I think it's perfectly fine to say, let's change the nature of our sexual relationship or change the nature of our social relationship or whatever. The problem is when you get kids.
Yeah.
Kids are nothing but problems.
Yeah. And I've got 2 great kids. I'm thrilled that I got my kids, and I'm still good friends with my first wife. We were married for 17 years, have 2 great kids. I do not consider that 17-year marriage a failure. I do not consider that at all. It was a massive success on many, many fronts. Now, we didn't perform as well as a couple in some areas as we performed in other areas, but that's true of almost any endeavor in life. You got a job, you may be the best in one area of the job and not the best in the other. But we still like each other. We still can talk to each other. And this is kind of in direct response to what you said a little bit earlier, Christina. We when we got divorced, we said we're not going to hire a bunch of lawyers. We're going to go find a mediator, a divorce mediator, and we're going to go through a series of meetings with the mediator and put a document together. It took us, I think, 4 meetings, I think, to finalize the document. And the mediator sat down with us and said, okay, I'm starting my watch. And he looked at his watch and said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Yell at each other all you want, because when you finish yelling, then we'll get down to business. And she and I looked at each other and said, we've already done all the yelling we need, so I won't get off that. I mean, it was really bright on his part. I really thought that was just brilliant. But the fact is, why do we need to yell at each other at all if we're acknowledging we both are ready for the third phase? We got through the first phase, and the second phase started when we had kids. We got through the second phase as far as we could go, and we are both ready to move on to a third phase in our life. And what's wrong with renegotiating? In fact, what that divorce settlement was a renegotiation of the relationship, because we still had kids to raise. My kids were not ready to leave the home yet. They were 8 and 12 years old when we got divorced. So if you think about it, that mediation was simply a renegotiation of a relationship. You can't divorce the mother or father of your children.
Yeah.
They're going to be the mother or father of your children for most people for the rest of your life. So you might as well renegotiate the relationship. We're not going to have sex together. We're not going to be married anymore, but we're still going to cooperate. We're not going to speak badly behind each other's backs. Those are the kinds of things, and we were very explicit about that in our agreement. So that's actually the worst case scenario in terms of getting divorced. But I think what you're asking about is how do we renegotiate without going through the breakup?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? So I see several. There's a lot of ways to do it. You could go to a counselor, a marriage counselor, and you could sit down with that marriage counselor. Oh, and be sure you find the marriage counselor through the Secular Therapy Project, or get a good secular therapist who's open to alternative relationship styles. If you got a therapist that's hung up on traditional monogamy, they shouldn't be counseling couples. And I'm telling you, a hell of a lot of therapists out there are hung up on monogamy. They think, I've had therapists tell me that we're a monogamous species. But there's fucking no evidence for that anywhere. we're anything but a monogamous species. So what we're trying to do is trying to say, well, how can we, again, it's our only body we're going to get, it's the only life we're going to get, so how can we negotiate a relationship with another human being that's gratifying for both of us, supports both of our desires and needs, but doesn't put us into a straitjacket, a relationship straitjacket. And the way to do that is to go to a therapist and say, we're having some difficulties in X, Y, or Z area, and we think we need to renegotiate our relationship. Would you help us do that? And a therapist worth their salt can help you renegotiate. And what they would probably do, and I'm not saying every therapist would do it the way Darrel did, but what they would probably do is they'd try to get some kind of assessment of where you are as a couple, where you are as individuals, how those goals are interacting or not interacting, and then try to help you. They wouldn't come up with a plan. They'll help you come up with a methodology for moving forward. And that may mean that, okay, we're gonna change this. Instead of spending so damn much time on the kids, we're gonna renegotiate so that we have one hot date per week, and at that hot date, she can suggest what that'll be one week, and I can suggest what it'll be the next week or something. You know, you can start structuring it a little bit. I'm not big on structuring, but some people are, and that might work. So what I'm telling you is that therapists can help you get away from the anger, the frustration, the sense of betrayal, sense of loss, by helping you see where you are in the life cycle, helping you understand how to renegotiate desires and stuff like that. I've seen many couples. One of the biggest problems I see is when a couple hits that second stage or goes through this into the third stage, they don't want to get divorced, but they want to open the marriage up. And I see a lot of couples wanting to open their marriage up somewhere around 15 to 20 years. You know, I've been married 15 to 20 years. And they say, I'd like to open the marriage up. You can have a boyfriend, I can have a girlfriend or whatever, and we can negotiate. That's another thing. You can go to a poly-friendly or alternative relationship styles therapist, and they can help you figure out, is this right for you? Because let me warn you, polyamory and swinging are not solutions for marital problems. They're not the way to treat a marital problem. However, that may be the outcome of you renegotiating your relationship, realizing, wow, we have a lot more energy, and we'd like to use that energy in other ways. And it's not a slam against your partner or your spouse. That's just the way we're wired as human beings.
I could see someone coming into this third stage and wanting to, like, thinking of, okay, do we open up the relationship? I could see if they hadn't set the groundwork in the first two stages, that trying to do that could be very hard. So what are some things that you could foster in the first two stages that would help that transition be easier?
Well, I think you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, Christina, and that is if you put the understanding down before you even get married, like you did, kind of negotiate that we were going to give ourselves the option of negotiating to keep the negotiation option open. I think that's brilliant, and hats off to you. And gosh, now my poster child for new negotiations. But the problem is so many people get married, and they've been married 15, 20 years, and they did not put that groundwork to the relationship. So I think that's what you're asking me, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's several ways to do it. I actually had that in mind when I wrote my book, Sex and God. And so what I did was, when I was writing the last 5 chapters of the book, and yes, this is an advertisement for the book, but it's also an advertisement for the answer to your question.
Thank you. That's okay.
When I was writing those last 5 chapters, I went back and I really tried to shape those chapters in a way that two people could sit down and read those chapters together, and it would force them to ask questions about their sexuality and about the nature and role of sex in their relationship, just ask a lot of questions, those last 5 chapters. So actually, Christina, what I oftentimes do is I say, go read the last 5 chapters of my book, but read it together. Mm-hmm. The partners, I don't care what relationship methodology you carry, but I do think that if you read them together, and then every chapter you're going to sit down and say, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Or, man, I had that thought and I was afraid to talk about it. So those are the kinds of things that can happen when you just read something together. I encourage people to go read The Ethical Slut together, for example.
Yes, such a good book.
Yeah, or Opening Up, or Loving More, or, there's More Than One, or there's More Than Two, I mean. Mm-hmm. There's a number of really good books. And most of those are all polyamory focused. Yep. However, I'm not pushing that. I don't care if you're poly or not. But what those books do, why I love the poly community so much, is poly community really forces you to ask some questions about yourself.
Yep.
All right. Sounds like a very knowing yep. Not going to ask any more questions, but I'm guessing.
With the poly community, just want to specify here, we're talking about polyester, right? No, I missed the conversation here.
Yeah, as long as you don't mix that with cotton fabrics.
Yes.
That's in the 10 Commandments, is it? Thou shalt not mix fabrics or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, that's
we're
right.
all about straight polyester fabrics.
Yeah, let's leave Kevin in his medieval world here, and Christina, you and I'll hit it off. Just
all right, I'll go back to sleep.
Yeah, hit you with another tranquilizer.
Kevin hasn't joined the 21st century yet.
Yeah.
I do have a question, though, a serious one. What happens then when you have a partner that, let's say it's stage 3, like you put in your example, and one who is not in that stage? Because right now the conversation has been edging on both partners are agreeing to move on to some kind or another. But that I don't think that really happens to a lot of couples.
You're right, it doesn't. And that's why I say when you're hitting rough spots as a couple, it almost never is because one person is the bad guy and the other person's the good guy. That's, 9 times out of 10, that's not the problem. Mm-hmm. It's just that your desires, energy levels, interests have diverged in some way. It doesn't mean you have to get divorced, but it does mean you have to go find somebody that can help you identify and negotiate these things. Because I'll tell you, we are the fucking worst at evaluating ourselves. And we're even worse at evaluating our own relationships. We need an objective third party out there to just ask the right questions and force us to talk. So going back to what you're asking there, and I want to just say my stages are just arbitrary. I'm just using that as a way to help us understand where we're going. If somebody is, if you're hitting that rough spot, the therapist can really help you figure out where to go. However, you got to get in therapy in the first place.
Yeah.
And you have to have a partner who's willing to renegotiate or even know what that is. And if you don't have a partner who's willing to go to therapy with you, whether it happens to be poly or traditional or whatever, at that point, what does the person who wants to renegotiate do?
Right. Well, you cannot. You're right. You're absolutely right, Nancy, that you can't force somebody, but you can say you can. And I would not even say, if you're pretty sure your partner's not interested in or would be shocked by the notion of renegotiating, don't use that term. Don't come at them. That's a bridge too far at this point in time. Just say, I'm feeling a lot of tension between us. We're not getting along as well as we used to. We're not spending as much time. Our sex life has dropped down to once a month, missionary style, whether we need it or not. When you get down to that, you've got some evidence that the relationship has materially changed, and that's the evidence you can talk out loud with your partner. Now, it's scary. I'm not saying it's not scary, but don't deny the evidence. If I got poison in my water or my food, and I find out I've got poison in it, I don't keep drinking it.
Yeah. That's
kind of what you're doing. You ignore the obvious. And I'll tell you, couples are so damn good at ignoring the obvious. It's just, as a therapist, it's mind-boggling sometimes. However, Darrel has avoided the obvious in his own relationships. So I've done it. I know how easy it is to just say, oh, that's not important, or I'll wait till next year to deal with that, or I don't want to talk about it because it's too scary to me. And I've done all those things. So I'm not perfect, and I know how easy it is. But once you've got the courage up, talk to your partner, say, here's the evidence I've got that our relationship is not what you and I both thought it would be 5 years ago or 20 years ago. Let's go to a therapist. Now, what a therapist will do is, without even using the terms renegotiation, the therapist will help you figure out what areas of your life need to be negotiated or renegotiated. And it may be within 3 or 4 sessions, you may come to the conclusion that there are areas that we cannot renegotiate.
Yeah.
They're non-negotiable for one party or the other, which I'm sorry, that's the way things go. But do you think waiting another 5 years is going to make those things better? Probably not. Now, I'm talking a lot here, Christina, so if you need to shut
that's I'm enjoying listening to everything you have to say, so I am just enjoying this.
Okay, well, I can get off on my high horse here.
Well, at least the therapy options, in the 21st century, as we were talking to Kevin, you were talking to Kevin before, are so much more realistic than in your generation or my generation. And I believe my generation is probably when you were talking about somewhere between your parents and your grandparents, where the expectation was that you were going to get married. There wasn't a really nice first husband for you, and you could always look forward to a second one, but you were bound to that marriage. You did try to make the best of it, with the woman in many, many cases being told it's your husband's life that is the most important, and you need to be the more understanding one, regardless of whether it turns you into a bitter person or an unfulfilled one. And
as it should be, goddamn.
Yeah, exactly. And then going to therapy, renegotiation was, I either have to stay stuck in this or I have to find a way to divorce. And either one brought such feelings of anxiety and guilt that it was difficult to move forward. But men, I think, at this point are, and you're the therapist, so you can tell me whether or not my guess is right or wrong. I think many men are much more open to renegotiation or having a relationship that is based perhaps on a different premise that might work out better. Whereas with my generation, I don't think men were all that open. So you do have people, as you were saying at the beginning, Darrel, who just were miserable, but they thought that's what life was like. So it's good to be able to hear that there are options, but there are so many people who are still trapped in a traditional relationship and don't have the resources or the partner to be able to do anything about it, and that's very sad.
I think Nancy, you're on target there. There are huge generational differences. However, I still see even in the youngest generations, that are long-term relationship age, let's say at least in their 20s, I think they still. These messages are all over the internet. They're all over the pop culture and pop music and country music. So it's not like they're not getting the same messages we got. Yeah. They still listen to the Beatles. No,
it totally makes sense, because even you can even talk to the younger generation right now, and you will see, for example, the bride-to-be that's about to get married. She's got everything planned down to a T for the wedding day. But what happens after? She has no idea.
No idea.
No idea what's going to happen after, and of course the groom usually just goes along anyway.
We're still, and this has been insidious as. We've still got this purity culture bullshit in our culture, with women being told you're broken, you're diseased, you're bad if you've had sex before marriage, and that's of course in the religious communities that are out there, and we're not just talking. We right now on this podcast, we're not just talking to secular people. We're talking to people who were deeply religious at one time, and now they're trying to deal with this stuff. And that's something we, at Recovering from Religion, it is a daily. We have people chatting in daily on our chat line saying, I have become an atheist, or I'm an agnostic, or I'm leaving the church. I still believe in God, but I'm leaving the church. And my husband or wife, I can't tell my husband or wife. And if I do, how do I do that? And will that destroy my marriage? What they're really saying is, God won't let me renegotiate this marriage, or their God belief won't let us renegotiate the marriage, because the God thing is a non-negotiable. Because we got married in a church. Jesus blessed our marriage. We've been having a threesome with Jesus since we got married. and they just can't get out of that. So, Nancy, in my observation and in my experience, it's this God belief that gets in the way of renegotiating many relationships. And even among secular people, because I think the secular people oftentimes bring their God, some of the God ideas into it. But even so, for example, I was just watching a chat come through on our chat line just this morning from somebody who was born and raised in Indonesia. They live in a Western country now. But their background was Buddhist, and not even strong in that. And one parent was more Christian, the other was more Buddhist, or that's kind of what I got from the chat. And what they were saying sounded just the same kind of restrictions, the same kind of fear of I've failed if I get divorced, I've failed if I have a bad result in this relationship. So it's not just Christians, and it's not just Muslims or Hindus. It's Buddhists as well. It's a lot of different things. And even if this person is now secular, and they're still dealing with some of this ancient in their life history, ancient training they got when they were a child in early childhood Buddhism and early childhood Christianity.
Earlier you were talking about how in pop music and country music you hear these themes. And I also see similar themes in like movies, especially like children's movies, where it's like you meet your love of your life and you instantly connect. And do you think that this idea that you almost have a psychic connection with the love of your life and promotes the idea of like you don't have to like talk about your feelings because they'll just know what you're thinking, and that makes it the feeling or the idea that you have to talk to your significant other almost like, oh, I have failed because I have to talk to them.
You just hit that's a big button. I think you hit the nail on the head. The fact that I'm having to talk triggers the whole failure notion. But that you're right, that comes out of our pop culture and training we got in church, or the training we got from our parents, culture, whatever. And I think it does trigger a fear, and it triggers an emotional response that we've been programmed for. I think you're right. We were programmed from the day we were born, practically, to have this notion in our relationship. It underlies the whole thing. It's like a polluted stream flowing underneath the ground, right where we stand, and sooner or later the water comes up and it bites us in the back. I'm really mixing metaphors up here.
Yeah, whatever you do, don't put your cow in front of the plow while you're doing the water thing, and don't mix your eggs in that basket at the same time.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll try to not do that, whatever that was.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Dr. Darrel Ray, and we will definitely have you back to talk about everything we want to talk about, because this subject literally has no end.
I agree.
There's no end. So if somebody wants to learn more about what your research and what you talk about, and if they want to, because I know you also believe you had a podcast that you've done.
Yeah. Right.
And read your books. Where can they go to find more?
Well, of course, my books are all on Amazon, but my podcast, I did it for 3 years, and then I was fortunate that the atheist community of Austin contacted me and said, we'd like to take over your podcast if you're open to it. So I signed it over to them. I can still be a guest anytime, or a host anytime, And I don't really run it. They run it. It's a great relationship. I don't have to worry about a podcast. But anyway, they can hear the Secular Sexuality podcast every Thursday night. It's live. It's a call-in.
Oh, nice.
You can call in and ask all sorts of questions to the hosts. And I'm sure your listeners would like to call in and, you can ask about whatever. And they always end it the way I when we signed the contract to sign my podcast over, I asked them if they didn't have to do this, but they agreed to it. Please sign off every time the way I sign off. And my sign off is always, now go out and give yourself a big orgasm or give someone else a big orgasm. So they continue to sign off, and that just makes my heart warm.
That's
I love
awesome.
it. But I do want to. You promised me I could talk about the other things I need to talk about.
Yes.
Can we do that briefly? I won't take a lot of time.
Totally.
So, like I said, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary as Recovering from Religion, and we are delighted and excited about that. As a part of that, we've decided to do a first-time event called an excursion. It will be in the beautiful foothills of North Carolina, where we will be bringing together anybody that wants to. You can go to our website, recoveringfromreligion.org, and register. It'll be basically a retreat, but we don't like that word since it has those religious overtones. Yeah. We're calling it a recovery excursion. Anybody recovering from religion or dealing with the consequences of the dogma they were raised with can come. We've got beautiful, gorgeous cabins to sleep in, and boy, they're anything but primitive, I'll tell you that. And I think we've got enough cabins to hold maybe as many as 100 people. We're going to have 4 psychotherapists there for the entire weekend in case somebody just needs to sit down and talk to a professional. We're going to have me walking around and giving people nature tours because I'm a mountain climber and hiker. We'll have an astronomer there to talk about. The focus of the excursion is reconnect with your nature, because religion disconnects you from your nature. You look at a sunrise and you think, oh, God rose that sun. No, the rotation of the earth rose the sun. And you look at your body and say, God made this body and it's shameful and it's all this. No, it's the only body you got, and God didn't make it. Evolution gave it to you. So we'll be helping people just explore that. And you won't have to go to anything you don't want to. It's not church camp. We certainly won't be praying. We certainly won't be singing. Unless you want to bring your guitar and somebody can sing along. We don't care. But it's just going to be the first time we've ever done this before. We have hundreds, thousands of people that come to our helpline every year. And we just thought this might be another opportunity for people to connect with our volunteers, with our board, with other people dealing with the consequences of leaving religion. And we're super, super excited. So if you're interested, go and click on the excursion tab at recoveringfromreligion.org.
And when will that be?
It's in September. Gosh, I'd have to go to my calendars.
It's in September.
I should have memorized that by now. I've said it to me. It's September 2021-22. It's just about a half an hour outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
Fantastic.
That is absolutely gorgeous country. You can't beat it. Just so pretty. Yeah.
Well, we looked at where a lot of our clients and members were located, and we found that a lot of them were in the southeast, so it's within driving distance of probably a lot of people that might be interested. Mm-hmm. And I also mentioned the Secular Therapy Project and therapy a lot in this podcast, so I just want to encourage people to go to seculartherapy.org if they need a good therapist that will not send you back to church and will not pray with you. And last and certainly not least, my big Memorial Day party is coming up at my house, which none of you have ever attended. I'm just saying.
To be fair, I don't really want to go to the States right now. It's kind of terrifying.
I have, we call this anti-Trump territory.
Oh, fantastic.
7 acres in Kansas that are anti-Trump territory. Anyway, Mandisa Thomas will be our special guest this year.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you talked to Mandisa, but she's one of my favoritist of people. She will be here, and she will also be speaking at Oasis that Sunday morning as well. I always try to have a special guest. Seth Andrews has been my special guest in the past, and I've had a bunch of other special guests over the years. And it's good to have Mandisa this year.
Fantastic.
But it's 21 hours of partying at my house.
Nice.
Here's the deal. If you consider yourself an atheist, you're really not. Muslims have to go to Mecca to be a good Muslim. Atheists have to come to my party to be a full-fledged atheist. So until you get to my house for one of my parties, you cannot claim that distinction.
Well, I guess we have to go now.
I'm to the Flying Spaghetti Monster, so I can say this kind of stuff with great authority.
Well, if anybody wants to contact you, what is your contact information?
They can get a hold of me at recoveringfromreligion.org. They can contact me at Darrel at recoveringfromreligion.org.
Fantastic.
I'm all over Facebook. If you friend me, I've got 5,000 of my closest friends there, so I don't just friend everybody anymore. But if I've actually met you, I generally will let you. I'll friend you on Facebook.
Fantastic.
But if I haven't met you, if you read my books and you come on and say I read your books, you're much more likely to get a friend from me than that. I'm kind of egotistical about that.
So before we let you go, we got to get you to say, I am Dr. Darrel Ray, and I took a left at the Valley.
I am Dr. Darrel Ray, and I took a left at the Valley.
And that was our amazing guest, Dr. Darrel Ray. That was such a good conversation.
Love talking to Darrel. He's such a hoot. Just love the man.
I can't wait to have him back.
I know.
Yeah,
I can we just keep talking for 3 hours?
No,
we totally could.
I mean, he's a therapist, and we understand that they're generally great conversationalists. But the man himself is so warm, and he's just so easy with. Doesn't make a difference what you're talking about. He's right in there with you. He's just great.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I didn't say during the interview, but I really kind of wanted to add there, is a great line by Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams. He says, "It's better to be alone than to be with somebody that makes you feel like you're alone."
Yes.
And
that's so true.
Sometimes you have to really look at the person, and you give it your best shot. And I'm not saying break up with whoever you're with here, but sometimes you have to really go back and say, okay, this is not where I think we should be, or where I want this to be. And it's okay to be a tad selfish with yourself, because you have needs too.
Exactly, and the relationship is generally it's not just all on one person.
Yeah, and you're never going to get 100% of everything you want, but if you can get 80% of everything you want in a relationship and live with that 20% you don't have, then maybe that's really your threshold of where you want to be, right?
And it involves a little bit of that give and take.
Yeah, and also
communication, people.
Yes, communication.
Communication.
And you also have to remember that you cannot change the person, the partner you're with, right?
No.
Exactly.
You shouldn't ask them to change who they are as well. So it's really, you have to be honest with yourself, honest with them, and say, are we a good fit?
Yeah.
Are we actually a good fit? And let's face it, we are half a chromosome away from bonobo monkeys.
Yeah.
So it'd be, maybe we should just have orgies all the time like they do.
And you know what? Look into different relationship styles if you've never done it before, because the first people I dated, I immediately, I always knew it was going to end, and I never felt okay.
Yeah.
And then I found polyamory, and I'm like, wait, what is this amazing thing? And that's what my relationship was missing, because that's what I am. I'm polyamorous.
Yeah,
I can't not be polyamorous.
If people doesn't do it for you, think about furniture, right?
Exactly. Or get some nice toys.
I got that look from Kirsten. It's like, oh God.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's difficult if people feel a certain way and their partner doesn't endorse that or doesn't respond to it, and you begin to think, I'm a failure, there's something the matter with me. You have to say, maybe I have the wrong partner, or maybe I have the right partner, we're just not approaching it the right way. But so many times it's an either or, and mostly people take anxiety and blame on their own shoulders, and it's difficult to move on from there.
Okay, so if you would like to reach us, you can find us at our Facebook page, which you guys should leave comments and let me know how amazing I did, because I need constant reassurance, because I am a deeply anxious person. You can find our website at www.leftatthevalley.com. Our Twitter is at LATV Podcast. You can send your emails to leftatthevalley@outlook.com.
Oh, leftatvalley at outlook.com.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I can't read.
That's
leftatvalley@outlook.com. Send your complaints to Nancy, but make sure you duck or side jump or just get out of the way of the knives that are being thrown. Give us a 5-star review anywhere you can, because it really helps people find the show. It helps us feel better, because I mentioned I'm a very insecure person. If you would like to hear extra bits of the show that we don't put in, you can donate to Patreon, and there'll be some goodies there for you. And you can find that at patreon.com/LATV.
Oh, great. Now I got to put some goodies in there.
Well, yeah, we're going to put the recording we just did.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, that's what we said.
You just created a ton more work for me all of a sudden. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I do. Create work for everyone around me.
Coming up.
It's okay, just teach me how to do it and I'll help.
Next week, you were supposed to do the whole Patreon thing from the get-go anyway.
Yeah, but did I mention I'm a deeply flawed human being?
Yeah.
She also is a, what's the word? I don't know, it fails me now.
We'll be talking to Sarah Austin, a transgender woman and YouTuber. After that, we have David Fitzgerald talking to us about Moses. We'll have our friend Anthony Magnabasco giving us another lesson in street epistemology. We'll be talking to our favorite nuclear physicist, Dr. Ben Davis.
Whoop, whoop.
Andrew Jasko is coming back as well with Red Birch to talk about cults.
Ooh.
We'll be talking to Hertzie Hertz of the Minnesota Atheists, and our friend Lilith Starr, the Satanist, comes back to talk to us about her book.
Wow.
Lots of stuff coming down the pipe.
I'm so excited.
Congratulations on taking over the show for now.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah,
it was a fun show, Christina. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. Lots of nerves. I almost had a panic attack this morning. That was fun.
You did good.
You did great.
You did amazing.
Yeah, let's do this some more.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, did you enjoy being able to actually understand what was being said?
I'm feeling attacked here.
That's okay.
No, we're just
that was her intention.
We're just renegotiating.
Oh God, that's it. I'm leaving. Thank you guys.
Have a wonderful May the 4th.
Until next time.
Well, I just have to begin with this. Happy Naked Gardening Day.
Oh, Naked Gardening Day.
Yeah.
You should go on my Facebook page right now and look. You may not want to talk to me after that.
Oh.
Just saying.
No, if we were there, we'd join you.
You've been on the show the most as a repeat guest.
It's because we love you.
You just
absolutely
love
that's good. That's good. Let's keep that rate up here, because I actually wish I could come be on the studio with you guys every time. It's fun.
Well, what we need to do then is have a naked studio day.
I'm there. All right.
Until the next flight.
I figured that would be the motivation for you to come up.